talking about the autism disorder. It's a spectrum of disease starting from very mild symptoms, and it can go all the way to kids that are really disabled by this neurodevelopment problem. And we are finding out that 1 out of 68 children are suffering from this. These numbers are on the rise. Whether we are diagnosing them better, and that's why there's a rise, or whether we're understanding the disease better, these are some of the reasons why we think we're seeing this, and the disease is already is increasing. We're seeing about 5 times more among boys than girls, and it's the whole idea behind this segment is really to educate parents to pay attention to some of the signs and symptoms. This is obviously a real complex developmental disabilities where the brain is not, and the nerves in the brain in certain parts that are responsible for social factors, communication skills, making connection with other people and other friends are not developed yet. And in the recent study that we're going to be talking about, they have used MRI to detect whether there's any difference in the blood flow in the brain. And based on this particular study that just came out, they looked at about 80 patients. 40 of them, they looked at normal patients versus this autistic disorder, spectrum disorder. And what they're finding out is that there is some increase in the blood flow in the frontal lobe of the brain, and which is responsible for social behaviors. And that area is really underdeveloped. The neurons are not developed correctly, and that's one of the reasons why we see kids with some of this spectrum. Now, a lot of signs and symptoms would be like a kid at the age of 16 months, maybe not using one word. Usually by 2 years, they should be using 2 words, and they're not using it. So they stare at a lot of times. They have a lot of repetitive movements. And they are also not connecting and making friends and socializing with other people like the way other kids will do. A lot of times light and sound and sudden moves excite them. And these are some of the things you want to pay attention to. The reason why it's important to find autism early, and if you have any experience or if you have a child with autism, you can always call 877-970-2999 and tell us about your experience. But early intervention is really the key. Study after study shows that when you diagnose these kids early on, they develop their social skills better, their decision-making better, connection with other people, and their thinking and their memory also improves by early intervention. Unfortunately, there's really no good diagnostic tools to do this, and that's why it's up to the parents to know. Now, what are some of the risk factors? Some studies shows that the fathers that are having the kids at older age could have a risk factor because there's going to be a lot of mutation, and genetic mutation could be responsible for some of this. Some study shows that if there are mutations in genetic components in genes such as SYNGAPS1 is the reason why we see the autism and development of some of these nerves. Pregnant women who have either they get flu or they have persistent fever during the pregnancy, there has been written about that. And there has also been a lot of discussion about these vaccinations. And I know this even became a political discussion among the Republican discussion and Democrats. And so far, there has been no real scientific data to prove that any of these MMR vaccines can lead to autism. Whether the increased load of these vaccines is a problematic or not, that's a discussion. But as of today, there's really no scientific data to show that these vaccines can lead to increase in autism, and you want to be careful about this. The bigger news is that the Sesame Street is also now has a new character called Julia, and I think this is really brilliant that they have a Muppet as a autistic girl called Julia. So I guess the kids are not going to be left out, and this is also see amazing things in autistic children. That's the message out there, that they are also just like any other kids. They should be treated the same way. Unfortunately, we see that in the school system, there's 5 times more bullying of autistic kids, and that should really stop. And that's a big, strong message to a lot of parents to educate your kids that when you see someone like this, this is not a joke and not to play, and this is really important.